You are listening to Packers Talk Radio Network.
Packers Talk.
Eddie Lacy, Mike Daniels, Gilbert Brown, Don Barclay, Micah Hyde, your Green Bay Packers, yesterday's legends and today's superstars. From corporate or nonprofit events to private parties, add some spice, hire a Packers player from Mayfield Sports Marketing. For details, just go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances.
Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If a Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Packers Therapy.
It's Packers Therapy. It's Chris and Dave. After the Packers absorbed their first loss of the 2016 season, a 29-10 knee in the groin from the Broncos of Denver. Dave, before we talk about this game, I want to bring something to your attention. You know, we've known each other for a long time. 15 years, I think, right? It's been a long time. And
that's not news to me.
No. And we've been doing this podcast now. This is our 11th season. And as we get to this time of the year, it is getting close to the holiday gift-giving time. And I wanted to make a request now, because it may take you a while to find this thing. But for Christmas this year, I want you to get me one of those Eddie Lacy scales that when I step on it says, he's cool.
It's all right.
No, I just want to get that. I want to get up in the morning after having, I don't know, pizza and some cheeseburgers and stuff. I want to stand on that scale, and I want to say, he's cool.
Yeah, who said that exactly?
No, it was Eddie Lacy. He was being interviewed, I suppose, by a clutch of reporters. It was Jason Wilde that reported that this week, and this whole controversy about him looking bigger, and McCarthy saying, yeah, he's definitely bigger than he was as a rookie. So they asked him, gee, what does it say, Eddie, when you get on the scale? And he said, it says he's cool. Now that's the scale to have.
That is. I mean, it has to always say that. I don't want to say it until it's too much and it says that's not cool.
See, that's the problem.
I don't want to. Well, there was a shot of him. I think it was looking into the backfield, and it showed Eddie Lacy in a very unflattering pose. And I remember seeing it and going like, he does look sort of round. And a person at work pointed out the same highlight. So I wasn't the only one. Somehow the jersey, the white jersey, I don't know what it was not very flattering on him. Maybe they should wear stripes, like except the Steelers wear stripes, but those are more
horizontal.
Horizontal, yeah. Those aren't as flattering. No.
Yeah, at least that was something that was fun this week. That game on Sunday night was not fun. In fact, I think the word you used on Twitter to describe it was awful.
Yes, it was very, very awful. I don't even know where to begin with this game. It's so disappointing because you're 6-0, and yet there are cracks along this team in many different areas. I kind of bought into it. I felt like no, this team is really good. They're so good that even when they don't play so well on defense or they don't play so well on offense, that they can overcome teams and win. And I thought when the game is going to be tough when you play someone like Denver on the road or Carolina on the road, the ability and the talent of this team will step up and they'll overcome just about any challenge, because I thought this team is really, really good. And I suppose it's kind of like you've been chatting with someone, you're online dating, and just to find out it's really a 65-year-old man sitting in his mom's basement, right? That's sort of how I feel about this team. I feel completely misled in a way, and all of a sudden, from 5 minutes before the game where I felt really confident to 5 minutes after, my whole worldview on the Packers have changed a bit. But at the same time, before I get into all of that, it was a very tough call or a very tough game for the Packers to go into Denver to play on a Sunday night game after a bye that the Denver benefited, I think, a lot more than the Packers did, which I want to talk about. Because there was this whole thing about their offense is out of sync, and are they doing the pistol? Is it behind center? Well, I think they came to some kind of agreement during the bye week, and just like the Packers last year figured out, hey, let's throw Clay Matthews in middle linebacker, there was like a wrinkle or something new, and I think they got excited about it. And everything that sort of came with this game made this a really, really tough game to win. So I'm not sure if the Packers really are as bad as they looked, or was this just almost an impossible situation for them?
Well, after 6 wins in a row, I can't say that this is suddenly a bad team. I mean, I think this is a good team that had a bad week. And along the course of a 16-game, 17-week schedule, that's 4.5 months, even good teams, I think, are going to have bad weeks. It just so happened that they happened to have that bad week on the road against another good team. And let's face it, it was an AFC team. This loss, while ugly and not fun to watch, it doesn't hurt nearly as much as losing to Carolina would be in this week coming up. That's a conference team.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not easy to swallow. It wasn't fun, but they're 6-1. And I think, what did we have them for at the beginning of the year? 10 wins, 11 wins, something like that.
Yeah, they got to lose some.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's along the way you're going to play bad sometimes. Sometimes you're going to play good and still lose. It's not easy to win every game in the NFL. It just really doesn't happen that way. Maybe there will be an undefeated team this year. There seems to be 3 or so left right now. But in this league, it's very, very difficult to be clean every week. And your observation about this bye week benefiting Denver more than it did the Packers, I think, is a great observation, because they were a team that really was struggling offensively, and they used this time to get themselves back on the right page, and they gave Manning more freedom. I mean, he looked very much like the quarterback that he was 5 years ago when he was playing in Indianapolis. And the Packers, I think the downside for them is they did not go into the bye with having a terrible game where they had to do something to correct. The defense wasn't great in the San Diego game, but they gave up 20 points. They won the game. There's really no reason to panic, right? The offense put up 27 points. I mean, you don't have to crumple that up and throw it in the garbage. And so I think for Green Bay, there probably wasn't the same level of urgency to get something corrected. That may be changing now, because now you have back-to-back games sandwiched around a bye in which the defense gave up around 500 yards and over 1,000 yards in the 2 games. Now that's going to get people's attention right there. And offensively, things just aren't developing. It looks to me like Rodgers doesn't really know where to go with the ball. He's looking downfield, but he doesn't like any matchups that he sees, so he's holding it a long time until he's eventually giving in to the pass rush, and then chances are it's going to be a lousy throw. So, it wasn't an encouraging performance by any means this week against Denver, but I just think that you're going to go through stages in a season where everything is going right, then everything's going wrong for a while, and chances are it'll rebound again if you're a good team to where things are, going pretty well.
Yeah, the good news is I heard them say that last year New England went into Denver and got blown out and ended up winning the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And the Packers last year, which I completely forgot.
The New Orleans game?
The New Orleans Saints game got, I guess, completely cleaned out before the bye came, and really was within 1 out of 7 plays to make the Super Bowl themselves. So you can have you can lay an egg in the middle of the season, especially, again, you're on the road against a team that is good and has pretty good home field advantage. Not only home field advantage because of the crowd, but the the altitude and getting used to Denver. It's sort of like going to Green Bay when it's super cold. Like it's more than just going to Atlanta where it's loud. There's more stuff going on that Denver has a bit of an inherent advantage when they play at home. But there's some things to take and say, look, let's just wipe this game from our memory and go. But I just want to make this point. Let's imagine you're in a situation where something's not working, and you take a time out and you sit down, you sort of think about it, and you say, all right, this is the new plan, and it comes out and it starts to work. Like, I think the whole team then gets this excitement and gets totally jazzed up because they're like, hey, the old Peyton Manning's back, or it's working, or there's some kind of momentum on top of winning momentum that helps because you're like not just winning this game, it's like you're finally feel like you figured out something that's been bothering you for weeks. And it gives you sort of that extra added momentum. And I think that's what Denver had, where I think the Packers bye week was all about getting guys off of the injury reserve getting off of injury. It sounded like a few guys actually got hurt during the bye. Like all of a sudden James Starks out of the blue, and Demarius Randall was hurt. Like it seemed like guys were getting hurt during the bye week. And the Packers had really very little to correct, as you say, or at least they didn't come in looking like they did anything different. And I suppose when you're 6-0 and you say, look, everything is great, let's just get guys healthy and let's execute a little bit better and let's go after it. And they were just kind of the same team they were when they left. There's nothing different or wrinkle or oomph or anything for them to get sort of excited about. So I think that has something to do with it. And and then Denver gets up 14-0. It was over at that point. I mean, I think the team gave up. I think there's an element of that happening, which is why the game was 29-10 and looked even worse than 29-10. I think there's a little element of the team giving up, and I certainly think Rodgers lost all kinds of confidence in that game. And I don't know if it's fair to say he gave up or he looked gun shy or there's something going on with him that I just think this game was just the moons lined up in the wrong way, and it just was a disaster how it played out. And it's could very well that they come back next week and win, and everything's back on track. We feel good again. But you can't walk away with this game without asking yourself a ton of questions about the talent in this team, which we're going to have to address because it's not just that I can't just completely blow it off, but I think there's an element of that this was a really, really tough week for them to come in and play, much more so than I thought before the game started.
Well, Denver is a good team. It's not just like we were saying about San Diego. Those guys get paid too. It wasn't that. I mean, Denver is a legitimately good team, excellent defense, and they got good protection on Manning yesterday. Packers could not get much of a pass rush going. They didn't sack him, which is amazing for an immobile 39-year-old quarterback. You would think that they would get to him at least a couple of times, but they weren't.
Well, he threw the ball away quickly.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, they once again had I think, a really good scheme in place to beat the Packers. They did a lot of those crossing routes where it didn't require a lot of time to get rid of the ball. I mean, the Packers should probably expect to see more of that because people have seen that the pass rush that they have, if you got to take a 5 or 7 step drop, that pass rush is probably going to get there. And that is not how it played out for Denver. They did not give the Packers that particular chance. So, yeah, I did not enjoy the game, but I don't know that I'm discouraged in a long-term sense. I mean, it was not nice to watch, but we were talking a minute ago about the New Orleans game last year, and the Packers were able to use that as a teaching moment and recover from it. And it wouldn't surprise me now that the Packers used this particular loss, and an ugly loss that it was, as a teaching moment, as a motivational factor that might help them the rest of the way. There's always these watershed moments for teams. Maybe this was their watershed moment for the season.
Yeah, I suppose that could be the case. I hope that is. They don't have to be the best team in the AFC. There's a number of teams in the AFC that are pretty good. Denver, New England, obviously, Cincinnati. I think Pittsburgh's pretty good. There's a number of teams I think are pretty good. Look, we may never see Denver. We could win the Super Bowl and never see Denver again. I don't care. When the rest of their games, they go to the playoffs and they beat or they lose to New England. And if we can just be better than Carolina and Arizona and, I don't know, Minnesota, there's not that many in the NFC. We just have to be the best in the NFC and then hope we have a game of our life in the Super Bowl. But Denver, they could be the best team in the world. If New England takes care of them, then Denver is gone and behind us. I want to come back to all the question marks, though, this team had. And I don't know if Denver had the right scheme against them. It took them 2 weeks, and they analyzed what the Packers' weaknesses were, and they attacked it. And other teams can now exploit that because let's start first on the Packers' defense. I thought so. The Denver gets the ball, and we stop them first on the first drive, which was good. But then the second drive, I felt what they did. It wasn't like they ran the ball down our throats a lot until sort of as the game went on. But I thought early on the key was, and how they scored a couple of their touchdowns, is they went right after Casey Hayward.
Oh, they did.
I don't know if they went out after anyone else. They just basically said, we're just going to throw at Casey Hayward.
Well,
and
that's a slot corner who was playing outside, and he was exposed.
Right. And there is one, I thought, cover or one play that he made where he was covering Thomas, that it looked like he was running sort of with him and just sort of keeping him in his sort of 5-yard range, but not actually covering him. And I thought, well, if that's how you're going to do it all night long, then we might as well just give up the game because he's not covering him aggressively at all. And he just got burned. I thought for the first 2 drives when Denver went up 14-0, it was just Casey Hayward. Now, like you say, Sam Shields got hurt.
Yeah, that was not good.
And then also Rollins got
Quentin
hurt.
Rollins, right? Yep.
So I don't know how soon it all of a sudden, like before the game started, all of a sudden, what's Sam Shields on the sideline for? So how much of that is, I don't know what the status report is, Sam Shields. Have you heard? What's his deal?
No, I have not seen it yet. It's the projection was it was going to be a shoulder or maybe a collarbone injury. I have not seen, though, if they're going to miss time or if he's going to, if it's a broken collarbone, he could, I don't think miss the rest of the year, but miss most of the rest of the year. So we're speculating right now, but, that's the kind of thing that they probably shouldn't expect to have him next week.
Yeah, and if Casey Hayward is now a starting corner against good receivers in this league, well, that downgrades our chances pretty much. We had a lot of cornerbacks, and I think we had a lot of sort of young, talented guys, but we needed Sam Shields. And it's not like I thought Sam Shields was the best corner in the league, but, having him go down and everyone step up, that makes our pass defense quite a bit weaker. So my question is, did Denver see that Casey Hayward could be exposed and we're the first team to really go after that? Or was it just a combination of Manning's really good, the receivers are good, Sam Shields got hurt? Because I wonder now if that's going to be a problem, that Casey Hayward's just going to really hurt this team going forward.
Well, they're saying that the Sam Shields injury is not considered serious, and that's from a different number of different sources right now. He's day-to-day possible could play this weekend, but we'll see. I mean, he looked in some pretty good pain, so we'll have to wait and see. But it maybe depends on Rollins. I mean, maybe they wind up playing the 2 rookies. Maybe that's what they're going to do, is have your starting corners be Randall and Rollins, and then put Hayward in the slot. I don't know. That's what it appeared to be in this situation, that Hayward was overmatched. But maybe against a different quarterback and a different receiver, it'll be less of a problem. I mean, I think the issue with the game coming up this week, the matchup problem they're going to have is with Greg Olsen, and not so much with the wideouts for Carolina.
Yeah, and that will match up better with the Packers. I think they've done well against tight ends, but I thought that was the first thing I noticed, was that Casey Hayward was a weak link in our defense. They went after him.
He was, yeah.
And you wonder how much you have to compensate for that. You double cover, that leaves someone else open, or now you got to bring someone else back, and now the running game is open. So I felt a lot of times you're only as strong as your weakest player, and I thought Denver saw a weakness there, went after that, and I thought that started to tumble on for the Packers on defense. Not saying the Packers are bad defensively, although this is the second week in a row they looked pretty terrible. But they're going to, and it's hard to say that their pass rush was ineffective just because I thought Manning got rid of the ball so quickly, and that's the second week that's happened.
It's hard to know what to make of the defense. The first game against Chicago, not so good. But the second, third, fourth, and fifth games looked good, looked solid. In fact, that brought them right up to near the top of the NFL when it came to scoring defense. Then the last 2 weeks, they've been terrible, probably worse than the first week. So it's hard to know what you're going to get from this crew. It's maybe a little hard to evaluate when you're playing against an offense that was things just came together for him. I mean, it looked like the Peyton Manning that we saw for years in Indy and even the first couple of years in Denver. Just really hard to make whether or not the Packer defense is all of a sudden, after 4 really good weeks, is these last 2 weeks, is that indicative of who they are? I mean, it doesn't really feel like that should be the case, but if teams are figuring out something, then maybe that is going to be a problem for them, that they've been exposed with the things they like to do and things they think they can do. Maybe other teams are going to take that away, and we're going to see a very different Packers offense the rest of the way in, or at least until they figure out how they can score points against that.
Yeah, it doesn't help the defense much when the offense is going 3 and out and not looking very inspired either. And I think the defense is a reflection of how that offense does play. When they're scoring and they're at home and they're energetic, seems like their defense is very, very strong. It feels like this team can give up quickly. And, I come back to Julius Peppers a lot. I don't know why he just bothers me so, but I look at last night as a game where, you'd like to see that guy step up, and he was completely invisible. And, every once in a while in a replay, if you watch him, talk about giving up on plays. That guy at times looks very strong, pushes his, tackle into the quarterback. I mean, he looks great. And there are times where he is just standing around and doing very little. And I wonder if the defense sometimes reflects off of him. I know they see him as a leader. And when they're losing and things aren't going well and he's not putting much of the effort, I wonder if that reflects on the rest of the defense. I don't know, and maybe I'm just too hard on Peppers, but you have to say he was nearly invisible last night.
Yeah, I mean, there were times, that he did show up and he did make a difference, but there were, times he just was not around. I think he also, I haven't seen the play counts, but I think they are playing him less early in the season, the theory being they play him less earlier in the season, there'll be more left of him later on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you should mention this because, you got dinged this week in email from a guy named Zach David. Now, I don't know if this is, really his name or if it's David Zach, David Zach. I don't know. But anyway, he asked me to please point out to Dave that Julius Peppers leads the team in sacks. I would like to hear his complaint about that. Dave, go. Take it from there.
Yeah. Case in point is the Denver game. He had 1 tackle. And maybe it is that he's not playing as many snaps, but he should be a much more of a difference maker on this team. But it's hard. Other than Clay Matthews, I mean, everyone was basically invisible on defense. There's not. I mean, I saw Dayton Jones make a couple plays. Demarius Randall had a great interception.
Oh yeah. After getting burned several times, he stepped up, made a really nice interception. I'm glad you mentioned Dayton Jones. I think he's having not just a good game. I think he's having a good season.
Yeah, I do too. And it's I guess his last year under contract, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he looks the part, doesn't he? I mean,
like Tarzan.
He is big. Yeah, and I don't know if he's playing like Jane, but I mean he does. He looks big and strong, and so the guy looks good to me, and he's a first round pick for us. So you'd hope he'd do well, but I don't know if the defense played bad just because they are bad. I thought it started out poorly because Casey Hayward I thought just played very, very poorly. And when you're down 14-0, do you play with the same intensity on defense as you would when you're up 14-0?
Well, I think you do it at 14-0, and it may have even gotten to 17-0, right? I'm not exactly.
Yeah, it did before. Yeah,
and I think you play with the intensity because you got to keep this game within reach for the offense, and if you don't, there's no chance that you're going to win. And especially earlier in the game, I mean, that was all first half when they were down 14-0, 17-0. Now, if that's fourth quarter, yeah, I can see it maybe where a team gets essentially they topple their king and they give up, but I don't think that was the case. Down 14-0. I just think it was a deal where Denver came out and they're at home. That gives them some advantages. I think their offense was charged up because I think they made some adjustments that were quarterback friendly, or at least friendly to their particular quarterback. And because of that, I think it made the Packers defense, look worse than it probably is. Who knows where other factors could have played into that? I mean, you mentioned altitude before. That's something that sounds weak until you visit a place like Denver, and I know you've been there. Any kind of exertion that you do, just going up a flight of stairs, that makes a big difference at altitude if you are used to living like we do in Wisconsin, where the elevation is, between 500 feet and 1,200 feet. It's real different when you're at 5,200 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I know that was a concern for Eddie Lacy with his asthma and what have you, but the defense is a bit of a mystery. I don't quite know what to make of it. Morgan Burnett coming back I thought was going to be a real positive for this team. He had a big hit on the sidelines. But they ran into a team that just seemed to always be doing the right thing. And it kind of makes me think when I saw again that New England was being accused of cheating somehow with the Jets. And I thought, I wonder if some of these teams can figure out, or if they intercept and know what you're going to do on defense and on offense, that they can call the exact right play at the exact right time, and it just looks like they can't lose. Because it sure seemed like Denver just knew everything and what to do at the right time, and never got really a big hit on Manning. I think the way to beat them is that the guy doesn't want to get hit. He's a little bit like Favre, older in age. Yep. He doesn't want to be hit, so I think he's going to throw it rather than get hit. And so, you hope that you put pressure, even if you don't get to him, enough where he throws the ball and you get a couple picks. And that never happened one time, but
it was too late. The game was pretty much under control for Denver by that time.
And there are a couple of throws too that when he throws, it's not a zing throw like Rodgers throws or that we're used to. It's sort of an over the top kind of a weird delivery, but man, by the time it got there, guys are wide open.
What I noticed about Manning from comparing him from a couple of games I saw earlier in the season, he was throwing earlier in the year a lot of wobbly balls, kind of that lame duck thing. He was throwing spirals yesterday against the Packers. I mean, he maybe just playing with more confidence. Maybe the rest helped him. Whatever it was, he looked like a vastly improved quarterback compared to, say, just a month ago.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the unfortunate. It's not who you play; it's when you play them.
Exactly.
You wonder 5 weeks from now, after they've gone through 5 straight weeks, if he starts wobbling passes again. But hey, give a week off and some rest and some rehab, and all of a sudden, I got a game in me, and it's like you and me. If we were to play football, maybe we got a few throws in us, but make us play for a couple hours, forget it. That's the wrong time to play Peyton Manning. Just another one of those things where I just felt the Packers really kind of walked into a buzzsaw, and boy, I just never saw it happening. Everything I saw with Denver this year, where they got lucky to win, I watched a little bit of the Denver-Kansas City game, and they were very lucky to win that game. I knew their defense was good, but I thought they haven't played someone like the Packers yet. My goodness, their defense looked unstoppable the way they played. And I kind of want to switch to the offense, if you're okay with that, after the break.
I will do that. And also, I think a good way we can maybe talk about that is in the Wisconsin State Journal, Tom Oates' column graded Packers offense, defense, special teams, coaching, etc. For the Denver game, and maybe we can compare your grades against that of the columnist Tom Oates. So that might be a fun thing to do.
Let's do it.
This is the time in which we take a little break. We stop. We make sure that we get this thing all squared away so that by the end of this podcast, we aren't looping to the point where we're talking out of sequence. It's ugly when that kind of thing happens.
That's right.
It's also a good chance, Dave, for us to remind people this podcast remains unsponsored.
We haven't brought that up in a while.
Yeah, we haven't brought it up in a while, so we're bringing it up now. All right? It's unsponsored. You got a business. You'd like to have some pub. Boy, can we help you out. So anyway, this is Packers Therapy with Chris and Dave, and we will be back in just seconds. Back with more Packers Therapy, Chris and Dave, talking about the 29-10 seppuku that was issued to the Green Bay Packers. I guess seppuku is actually suicide, so they didn't really commit suicide, but they might as well have. Getting hammered by the Denver Broncos. Packers fall to 6-1 on the season. Only a game, Dave. Only a game ahead of the Minnesota Vikings at 5-2. Yeah, that's a little too close for comfort right there. We'll have to talk more about that. Maybe not later today, but as we get closer to that Viking game that's coming up. Packers, though, with a game to the good on the Vikings, and they will be playing the Carolina Panthers, who at this point, we're recording this on Monday night, looks like they're about to become a 7-0 team. So Packers will have probably another undefeated team to play coming up. Last night, watching this Packer game, it was almost like the Packers were like every other team with a struggling quarterback. Aaron Rodgers did not look much like the Aaron Rodgers that we've become accustomed to seeing, not just this season, but in past seasons as well. Threw for less than 100 yards, quarterback rating under 70. He didn't look right. He looked frustrated. He looked unsure of himself. I think he got dinged at least once pretty good on his shoulder. It wasn't pretty, Dave.
No, and did you see at the end he had a kind of a glassy-eyed look to him of either being hurt or confused, or I remember when Favre. Remember there was an opening day against Minnesota, and like all off season there was that guy Chris. What was his name? Moran or
no? What was it?
Horan or
Chris Horan? That's what it was.
Was it Horan?
Yeah,
and he said all off season he was coming after Favre, right? And that whole game we ended up losing. I felt Favre played really scared.
Yeah, it was like 1999 or so, something like that. Yeah,
it was opening game too. I'll never forget that. I watched it up in Kohler. It was terrible. I should have gone golfing instead. Anyway, and the other thing that reminded me of is I watched Matt Castle play against Seattle. Did you watch that game at all?
A little bit. Yep. This was the game. It was on the late. It was a late game on Sunday, right?
Yeah, late afternoon game, and I watched him dance around. I mean. My son or my daughter came through. I said, "Look at this quarterback! Look when he drops back, how he dances around like he's on barefoot on hot coals."
Exactly. Yep.
And I thought that's ridiculous. But our guy, he's calm in the pocket. And I watched Aaron Rodgers play, and I thought, not only is he playing like Matt Castle, but he's jumping around like him too. So somewhere along the way, he either got hurt. Maybe that first hit they showed where he really got smacked and he winced. Maybe that was more than we know, and it really knocked him off his game, or he just had no trust in his line. So, I mean, he was bouncing around.
Yeah, he looked like Favre, and I think it was 99, the opener against Minnesota, where you could just tell he wasn't comfortable there. And Aaron did not look at all comfortable. They faced a lot of good pass rushes this year. And at times, I think the line yesterday protected him as well as could be. But Aaron's not the kind of guy that's going to throw unnecessarily into a tight window. And if his guys appear covered, he's going to hold the ball until something better appears. And he's not much for the check down. He likes to go downfield. And because of that, those plays take longer to develop. And that means you're going to take some more hits. And when you're taking more hits, after a while, you begin moving around a lot more in the pocket. Oftentimes, his feet weren't set when he was throwing. I know that happens with him from time to time anyway. But he just did not look comfortable at all.
No, now not every team's not going to be like Denver that can get not only a decent pass rush, but a good pass rush with 4 guys, and then also have a backfield that can cover one-on-one, much less probably double cover. They probably double covered Cobb for most of that game. So, look, if Denver's got a good defense, that's just going to happen. But if the Packers are going to be short on wide receiver, they're going to have just a bunch of possession guys who can't really separate with speed, and they're going to throw with 5 to 7 step drops all the time, then Rodgers is going to have to throw the ball into tighter windows. Because the combination of those strings together, Rodgers not throwing, possession receivers up and down the field, and a decent defense, we're going to score 10 points more often than not, because those 3 things can't coexist and score points in this league.
You'd like to see them do things that would get the ball to guys on the move. And when they were being extensively covered, the way it appeared when they would show it on replay or give you that shot from that above camera, it looked like, the guys were going down and they were doing little turn-in moves or little turn-out moves. It wasn't like they, were continually running and moving to gain separation. It looked like they were,
right.
More, I don't know the exact terminology, but kind of stick routes.
Yeah, they'd sort of turn around and look and wave, and then realize it's not coming, and then start running somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And there was no...
Exactly.
I know exactly what you mean, and it seemed like there was one play where they showed every receiver, and it was all they ran the route, and they sort of stopped to see if it was there, and then when it just wasn't, everything sort of broke down. I also heard that they interviewed T.J. Lang and said, whatever happened to the slant, or, how come you guys weren't successful on 3-step drops and throw? And I think he said something to the effect, I don't know if you heard this on the post game, but he said, we hardly did any 3-step drop plays.
Yep.
And I thought, I wonder if that's true. I wonder if this team consistently, time and time again, called plays that were all 5 and 7-step drops. That to me is the first step right there. Like, you can't recognize that you have no time to throw the ball, and that you wouldn't go to a quicker style offense. Why wouldn't that be the first obvious thing you would do?
Well, I think it might have a lot to do with the fact that the quarterback doesn't like to do that. If you listen to Wilde talk about him, and I think Wilde knows him probably better than most of the reporters because they did that talk show together for 4 seasons. And he was saying that, Aaron doesn't like to do a couple things. He does not like to throw interceptions, which I think we all agree is a good thing. I don't think we like seeing interceptions.
Most people don't.
Yeah. And he also doesn't like taking check down plays. He likes to go downfield. I think we've seen that repeatedly too, where there's a guy available, short, but rather than throw it to that guy, even though he's open, we've seen him, look, and he wants to get more than that. He wants to go downfield with it. He wants to get 20 yards instead of 12. And I just kind of think that is a little bit how he is wired. And he likes those 5-step drops because that gives those guys more chance to get loose in a secondary, get that 16-yard and maybe then some yards after the catch kind of play. But the problem is I think that teams are taking that away and making it real difficult for them to get that. Now, they have played a lot of good defenses, and they won't play a defense like Denver or, defense like some of the others they've faced earlier in the year. Seattle, you're not going to face those guys all the time.
No.
But when they do, this is going to be a consistent challenge for them, I think, going forward, is teams that can rush 4 guys and that can take away some of those, turn-in routes, turn-out routes. You got to do something else to get not only your receivers on the move. I think they would be smart, given the fact that Aaron's pretty mobile. Get him on the move. Get him rolling outside of the pocket. Take some of the pressure off the line that way.
Yeah, I don't think they rolled him out where he kind of fakes a handoff left and then rolls to the right. I don't think they did that once. I don't think they've done that in the last few games that I can recall. I mean, every once in a while they do that and they have a tight end running, 5 yards down the field and he can, throw it. And that's a lot of times they start a game out that way.
Right.
I don't recall them running that style of play at all. It's just he's dropping back.
They tried a couple of times and Rodgers was missing guys. I think was it Lacey? Yeah, I think it was Lacey on the play you're talking about, or at least the pattern that you're talking about. And Rodgers throws it 4 feet short.
By that point,
he was so uncomfortable in the, back there. Yes, I mean, so he appeared anyway.
Yeah, it really is a problem. They have to figure out, and I still don't think they've done this. They have to figure out what kind of offense they want to be and be very good at that type of offense. I don't agree with those who say they got to run the ball more. I thought early in the game,
they ran the ball a lot. I thought yesterday.
Well, and they had some success, but there was one play I talked to my daughter was sitting there. I said, look they have 6 guys in the box, and she said, what does the box mean? So I explained it to her. And sure enough, they handed off to Lacey, and he got 6, 7, 8 yards. And the next play, I'm like, now they have like 9 in the box. And I thought for the rest of the game, if this wasn't the plan, this is where they evolved to, where it seemed like most of their linebackers, maybe there's a safety or two deep, but they crowded everyone at the line of scrimmage, and they played man-to-man tight on our receivers. And I think the plan was, you are not going to run on us. We're going to overload the box, and you're not going to be able to run. And you're going to have to show that your receivers can burn us over the top. And there was never, not only are they not able to, but there wasn't even an attempt to throw a jump ball, at a time.
50-50 ball, I guess they call this now, yeah.
Because, you get so many pass interferences on those. I don't know if there was hardly any time that we had a chance to even try to gripe for a pass interference because Rodgers doesn't throw those balls up for grabs at all. So I think he's going to have to change. They're going to have to change the offense a bit. He's going to have to take more chances. Or they're going to have to go and draft somebody or trade for someone who can stretch this offense down the field a bit, because the combination they got right now, I don't know what they want to do running-wise. I certainly don't think they know what to do passing-wise. And one thing that I thought really bothered me is the glaring weakness we have at tight end. I think Richard Rodgers, I was real high on him early. I thought the guy, he's big. Seems he's getting a better blocker. He catches everything you throw at him. In a matter of a few weeks, now I'm looking at him and thinking, he's a second-year guy that is maybe playing over his head. And he looks terrible. He makes a lot of penalty mistakes, and he gives you nothing from the tight end in an offense that I think could really use a tight end.
There was some talk that the player they might have missed most wasn't Jordy Nelson, but was Andrew Corliss. They are not getting anything to speak of from their tight ends right now. I mean, they're throwing out Justin Perillo right now, and he was running around out there not making much of a difference yesterday. Richard Rodgers, hard to know, big guy, what's he, like 6'7", 270? I mean, he's a big dude, but he's not very nifty. He goes down easy. He's got kind of that Bubba Franks thing going on. They could use some help from tight end, but does that necessarily mean it has to be a tight end? Could it be John Kuhn, lining up close to the line? Could they play 5 wide receivers with, again, somebody not necessarily playing the traditional tight end, but close into the line? Maybe a Jeff Janis kind of guy. I know they like to have him run free and hard outside the numbers, but he's a big enough guy. Maybe he plays in close to the line, and they can do something to approximate what they might get from a tight end by using somebody a little bit more nifty than Richard Rodgers. So I think that's a glaring hole in the offense right now. But I think there's so many things that are keeping them from being a more dynamic offense or a consistent running game. They really haven't had that. I think schematically, if they would do more to get their receivers available on the move, as opposed to these more, standard patterns where if they're covered, they're covered, instead of being able to run away from a guy. I mean, if they'd be able to do something like that. So there's a variety of things, I think, that's going on with the offense right now. And I know what you're saying, though, about Aaron Rodgers. I don't disagree, that maybe some more chances being taken would help. But on the other hand, interceptions are just, turnovers are just lethal. And I saw something this weekend. Maybe you saw it when I tweeted it out on Twitter. But somebody else who I was following tweeted a box score from 50 years ago, and it was the Packers playing the Cowboys in 1965. And I looked at the box score from the game, and the Packers won this game. It was low scoring. I want to say like 10-3, something like that. And the Packers had, I think, under 100 yards in total offense, completely dominated in the stats by Craig Morton and the Cowboys. Don Meredith wasn't playing for some reason. It was Craig Morton. But they won the game, and it's because they didn't turn the ball over, and Dallas had 3 turnovers. And I thought, even 50 years ago, turnovers are critical. So when we talk about Aaron Rodgers, maybe sometimes you got to take some more chances and throw guys open and do all that stuff that now seems to be popular to ding the guy. Turnovers are really, really an important commodity. You want to be so careful on what you do with the ball. It's frustrating to watch, but it may be the smarter thing to do that. If you don't think you can get the ball to a guy, if you don't think there's an opening there and it has a chance of being batted up in the air and intercepted or straight out intercepted, maybe the best thing, as ugly as it is to keep the ball and wind up running with it or getting sacked, something like that, rather than throw it away, because that's what's going to kill you.
I suppose so, and it's hard. After, I guess, last week or 2 weeks ago against San Diego, I didn't think it was his best game. This game was probably one of his poorer games.
Oh, yeah.
So after those two things, given all his whole body work, it's hard to overly criticize the guy.
True.
But, it's not like I'm saying either you're going to do what he's doing now or throw interceptions. That's not the choice I want. I want either hold the ball, get sacks, or, take some chances. I suppose that means maybe a few more interceptions, maybe. And I hated the Favre era where he was throwing one interception after another.
Hated that.
That was just that was the worst. And I guess if I'm choosing between the two type of regimes, I would rather have what Rodgers is doing than what Favre is doing. But this idea of him not trusting guys, him not throwing checkdowns, I thought they were saying on some of the commentary that it wasn't that guys were never open. It's just he just couldn't pull the trigger. And if that's the case, that's as much on him as anybody else. And he's going to have to recognize that with this team this year, it's not going to be like other years where we had Jennings and Nelson and Driver and all these guys that someone's going to be open. He's going to have to see a small window. He's going to have to throw it.
Yeah.
Although
yeah.
I would like to say I kind of wish, and this is probably not a great idea if it actually happened, because I do like Eddie Lacy and I like what he brings to the team. But I think I would almost like to see them go with 5 wide receivers on a few plays. Because even as good as Denver is, their 5th guy can't be that good. And if you throw even with Janis and Abadaris, even if Ty Montgomery is not healthy, you throw 5 wide receivers out there and let Rodgers scan the defense, see what he's got, because then you can throw the ball quickly. You've got 5 choices right out there right away, and you can do a lot of slants. You can do, you can be pretty creative, and I think you can get rid of the ball relatively quickly, rather than you run some. Right now it seems like they're relying on, you got your running back, you got your tight end in there, and you got maybe 3 receivers. That sort of traditional offense isn't really working because our line isn't built for the run game, I like Lacy, but I don't think our run game right now is very good. Our tight end, I think, is below average and maybe borderline awful. So let's go with our strength. It's our quarterback. It's his decision-making ability. Give him 5 wide receiver options. Don't disguise it to anybody, and let's go. Let's hurry it up and let's make this a track meet with him.
I think they'd like to. I mean, they keep saying that they'd like to run 75 plays a game, and last week they were just barely over 50, and this week they were under 50 plays run.
It was like 46.
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult to do a lot of stuff on offense if you're not getting a lot of plays. Part of that is they're not able to convert on third downs. I mean that's been a problem for them. That's above and beyond just the normal offense and what you're going to do. So I guess I kind of have to agree with Tom Oates when he did his column, and he was giving letter grades, and he said the Packer offense, in his opinion, was an F+, which I mean,
where'd the plus
I
come
guess
from?
Yeah. He's saying that Rodgers was hit 3 times in the first possession, sign of things to come. When Rodgers had time, he couldn't find anybody open. Receivers couldn't gain separation, which I think we just talked about. And it said the Packers' need for a tight end who can run really showed. And these are the things that we've been talking about. And F+ is kind of whimsical. I would think it was just F. I don't know. You can dress it up with a plus sign. What do you think?
Yeah, no, F+ and an F really is in the same category. But they need to change the conversation. They need to stop with this. It looks like Rodgers doesn't trust Janis. He doesn't throw guys, in tight coverage. I think they have to be aggressive on offense. I feel like they have this mentality: if we play it safe, we'll score. Let's just not make mistakes. I think with Nelson not in there and all the young guys they have, this is the result of the philosophy that Ted Thompson has. You got a second-year tight end. You've got a second-year wide receiver in Devontae Adams that you're counting on, and you got a rookie in Ty Montgomery. He comes back. You did sign James Jones off the waiver wire, so that that's a little bit different. But I mean, this offense is challenged. What you have is maybe the best quarterback in the league, and put it on his shoulders. And maybe that means Starks never plays again. I'd be fine with that. You have 4 wide receivers in Lacy or 5 wide receivers in an empty backfield, and forget this not trusting. You're gonna run your plays, and you're gonna throw where you're supposed to throw, and let's just go. I think that's the only way they're going to be able to pick up on this offense. Now, I say that, and they might beat Carolina. I don't think they're going to score a lot of points, but they might beat Carolina. And for the next 4 games after that, they may do very well against Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota. 5 games from now, we might be like, this team is just fine. But then they're going to, at some point in the playoffs, play an actually good team. And this bend-don't-break defense and this careful offense that they're playing is going to be a one-and-done, and we're going to sit here and complain about the things we're complaining about right now.
Well, this is where it gets hard for me. When we're looking ahead to the postseason, and we're only 7 games in, they're only 1 game up on the second-place team. I don't want to all of a sudden assume they're going to beat Detroit and Chicago, and certainly not Minnesota. I want to assume that. These are still legitimate games that are going to be hard fought. They're not necessarily wins, and maybe what we have to do is look beyond some of the imperfections that we've seen and realize that they're 6-1, and realize that they're a good team, and not take it for granted. I mean, so many people seem like they're just sitting the regular season out, that the question is, where will the Packers be seated, and, the Super Bowl is all that really matters, instead of trying to remember that, there's a lot of fun and entertainment that is still ahead of us here. So I don't think we want to get too far ahead of ourselves when we're looking at this team and saying, oh, my God, they played crappy in week 8 of the season, in their 7th game, and now there's the Super Bowl's in question. Well, I mean, not even there. They haven't won the division yet even. There's a lot of stuff that could go wrong at this point. So maybe focusing on the here and now maybe take some of that anxiety away.
Well, that's true, but my point is what are you going to do now so that you improve this team to win now so that you can be there at the end? I mean, there is a goal that we're all shooting toward. It's not to beat Carolina and it's done. It's to win the Super Bowl, win the division, get home field advantage, and then hopefully get it to the Super Bowl and win. I think if they go back to Lambeau Field and say, all right, what we got to do is we just got to execute better. We got to cover better. We got to rush better. We got to beat our man. We got to run our plays, the same plays we ran for the last 7 games. We just need to execute better. I think they're going to just maybe in a few weeks they'll wake up. But I think some changes need to happen. Now, I think they need to recognize that Rodgers is not a guy they can depend on, or if they're running a lot of plays with him or a lot of schemes and things where he's involved, well, that's going to be a challenge. He's not a primetime player. I think their run offense is something, as much as people want to talk about that they should run the ball more, I think they run well because teams play against the pass. I think if they're trying to stop the run, I don't think it's Eddie Lacy's fault. I think the offensive line is not very good in the run game, and so I don't think we're ever going to be a good running team when the team is trying to stop the run first.
I think they'll be a better running team. When the weather turns, they always seem like they get better on soft or muddy fields. They just seem to be better at that then, and I think just the changing of the season and getting toward winter is going to help the running game.
Maybe, but part of that has always been because our passing game has always been pretty good in cold weather too. Favre and both Rodgers have been pretty good in cold weather, and so when we're passing well, then also the running game is working. If we never get this passing game figured out, I think our running game is going to be challenged on and on. I mean, if you're Carolina, how would you play the Packers defensively? I think you would play to make sure they can't run and challenge those receivers, double cover Cobb, and play one-on-one on everybody else. And right now that seems to be the formula.
Yeah.
And keep Rodgers, in the pocket, try and keep him contained. And don't know the wide receivers aren't going to burn you.
I'm watching the Carolina game right now against the Colts, and they've got some guys in their front seven that can cause a lot of trouble and a lot of damage. I mean, they will be, fully challenged. But I think what they're going to do, what Carolina is going to do, is just like you said, make it an effort to keep Rodgers in the pocket. To counter that, I would like to see more Rodgers rolling out or bootlegging or spinning away early. Get him outside of the pocket on his own, and don't let him get trapped back there by teams that have decided that they're only going to rush to a point and contain Rodgers, and then he's got no one downfield to throw to, either because they're not open or because they're not as open as he would like them to be. I think that really is a good way to contain the offense.
Yeah, I think so too. But I don't think that really works that well if he can quickly get rid of the ball, hit guys in stride, let them run and make plays, run some screens, and I don't know. I mean, it's easy to say. Maybe they ran all kinds of things last night, and nothing ever worked. Denver was just too good of a defense to have anything happen. Maybe the fact that they only ran 46 plays, you didn't get that far into the playbook so that you could have had some diversity.
I do think that was a major factor in why they looked the way they did, because they could not get that deep into the playbook. I agree.
Yeah. Well, but I certainly think something is wrong with this offense, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers is helping with his overly safe way of approaching the passing game, the way they're constructed right now, and they're going to have to figure something out. They're either going to have to, change the offensive scheme a little bit. They're going to have to just talk to him and tell him that, look, you're going to have to give up on your stats a little bit and risk some more interceptions. They're going to have to get Ty Montgomery back, and maybe that will be helpful. Something's got to give, because this offense is challenged. And going to Carolina, if you're saying Carolina's defense is decent, then I don't know. Then I think we'll see it again next week. I think we're going to see another performance, maybe not as bad as we saw in Denver, but we could see another game when they score under 20 points, and that means probably Carolina is going to be in the game.
Well, right now, Carolina is holding Indy to 20 points, although Indy's about to kick a field goal probably to tie it and send it into overtime. Their tremendous middle linebacker just dropped an interception in the end zone. Is it Kinkley
or something? Yeah, I can never figure
he's
it out.
a heck of a player. So let's look at the defense here. Tom Oates, same grade in the defense, F+.
Well,
I guess he was feeling generous. Defense. I don't know what the story was there. I mean, obviously they had some problems in coverage, but what I understood is that the Broncos had some difficulty on the offensive line keeping guys healthy, but yet they didn't lay a glove on Peyton Manning all game, and I really couldn't figure out what was wrong. I mean, the Packers seemed to have their guys. I mean, we talked a little about Julius Peppers, but they had Clay Matthews, and he was being blocked, and he was not able to get home and be disruptive. I know part of it was the scheme to get rid of the ball quickly, but there was just really no push whatsoever. And the defense that they have is if you're not able to cut off the play by playing bump coverage, those short passes, you're not going to be able to disrupt them if you're sitting back in a zone.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't quite figure out. I don't know if they didn't blitz very much or they could just get pressure with 4. I thought Matthews got close a couple times, but then the ball comes out pretty quickly. They certainly, it's the middle of the field. They kept mentioning the middle of the field. The middle of the field was the problem. Whenever they have a wide receiver that's sort of running across the field, he seems to, and we're playing against guys like Rivers and Peyton, they seem to be able to hit these guys in stride and they're open. And these plays, I look at them and think, why don't we run plays like that? Why can't our guys run across the field and be open?
It doesn't seem like there are a lot of plays that the Packers use that require those receivers not just to come across the middle and, kind of stop, but, when they really have to run and catch the ball in stride, running away from a defender. There doesn't seem to be a lot of that, and I don't know if that's by design because they don't want to expose their wide receivers to getting lit up, or if there's another reason, why they don't like to do that. But it doesn't seem like the Packers run those plays as much as teams run those plays against the Packers.
Yep, it certainly doesn't. I thought San Diego figured that out. I thought the Bears, to a degree, had that good working. The teams that we did really well defensively, I think there were teams where we were offensively doing very well. We made them one-dimensional, and it seemed like, there was just a real fired-up defense that was going after the quarterback, and they were being fairly successful. Boy, they just didn't see that against Denver. I'm not ready to just say this team is not going to make the Super Bowl. I hope that's a wake.
He's 7 games in, 9 to play.
And they're 6-1.
Yeah, we talked about this in the preseason. There are several seasons within the season, and maybe what they needed to do was to lose to San Diego, because that would have got their attention, and you make adjustments on both sides of the ball in the bye week. But instead, when you're 6-0 and you're getting by and you're doing okay, maybe you don't have the same motivation that you do when you got blasted by New Orleans. I think that was the game right before the bye last year, and They changed things around, and they were a lot better team for it in the second half of the year. Right. Well, maybe this loss is a little bit of a wake-up call, or maybe it's going to take a loss at Carolina to do that.
Well, I certainly hope they get their act together. I mean, they could be one win away from, say they go into Carolina and they win by They win 29-10, and we Denver is just a distant memory. We're solidly, where we want to be for home field advantage, and off we're to the races. I can't get away from two sort of competing thoughts. Is one that we just faced a team that was ready to win. It was the right time for them. Everything came together. Versus, boy, all the question marks I've had since the beginning of the season really showed up against a good team. And then there's all these crazy stats that I've heard lately, like how many good teams have they beat lately? How many above 500 teams have they beat this year? None. When's the last time they beat a playoff contender on the road? It was something like 2012 or 11 or something like that. It's all of a sudden you're starting to question how good are these guys? How good is McCarthy in tough games? Can he coach his way out of a tough situation? How good is this offense? When I thought Richard Rodgers for a while, like, this guy's going to be a good tight end. Now I think he's terrible. Boy, so much has changed.
Well, but you let one game color things, and those. Hey, they played Seattle really well, and Seattle was without Cam Chancellor, but they won that game, and they won it easily. Now that's playing them at home, but still that's a quality opponent.
That's a quality win.
They've played a lot of teams with good pass rushers. They've caught pretty much every team with a stout defense, or the best defenses in the league that they've faced this year, and they're 6-1 at this point. I think one of the reasons why these teams don't have winning records because they played the Packers and they played some other teams. Yeah,
That's right.
I saw. Actually, didn't see it. I heard a stat looking at the teams were undefeated, and they all had the sum of the wins of the teams they beat. They were all pretty much like the Packers were. 11-24 or whatever. 13-22. All those teams were all in that same category. I think the only one that was close, I think New England was at the time they did this were 13-16 or some kind of deal, but still a losing record, but a closer losing record. So I don't know how much you can really read into a single game like this. I mean, you're still 6-1, and you were 6-0 coming into it. I do think we'll learn more about them, coming up against Carolina. This is a team that right now they're in overtime, so they might still be undefeated when they play the Packers this Sunday. But even at that, though, the schedule changes again at that point. You get a lot more divisional games. Even if they lose to Carolina, 3 weeks later, they might be looking at 9-2 at that point, and then you feel differently about it again.
Right.
So I'm just not ready to, everybody is all of a sudden stupid because they played a bad game, and they did play a bad game, but it was the first time this year they've had one of those. Even Bob McGinn in his article said that once or twice a year the Packers are going to look like this. I mean, this is what has happened. Even good teams look bad a couple times a season. Well, let's see what happens as the season goes on. Maybe this is the tipping point. Pastor Kevin was in touch with us, and he, thinks that there's a trend going right now. And maybe that is right. Maybe this is going to be a downward trend, and we're just seeing the beginning of it. But I just think it's too soon to make a definitive statement.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's all we have to go on right now. There's a ton of question marks with this team. The coaching staff has shown in the past that they have been able to come up with some new ideas, and whether it's on offense or defense. A lot of times in my mind, I criticize Capers and McCarthy because I think, boy, these guys don't inspire me like some of the great coaches, that I remember. But you have to say, last year they really made some adjustments on defense. I think when Jermichael Finley went out, McCarthy figured out how to kind of rejuvenate the offense with his wide receivers. They've shown the ability to find what their weak spot is, and by the end of the year have them clicking on all cylinders. So I guess we shouldn't give up on this team certainly yet.
Here's a question for you, Dave. Okay.
Okay.
One of the things that has changed, well, the biggest thing that's changed is no Jordy Nelson, of course. But one of the things that's changed is you have a different play caller, a guy who's a lot closer, personally, I think, to Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers, I think, has a lot more input, not just into the game planning, but I think that the calls that are made. Do you think, now that we're 7 games into this, and we're seeing, we're seeing Rodgers be hesitant, is this a situation where they might have to change back, and maybe that tension that existed between the head coach and play caller and the quarterback, maybe that was kind of a creative tension that was maybe better off for them? Or maybe it's too soon to say. But as, we look at the dysfunction of the offense, I'm sure part of it's not having Jordy Nelson. I'm sure part of it's not having Andrew Corliss. I'm sure part of it is Eddie Lacy.
Lacy's hurt.
He's hurt, and he's got a scale that doesn't work that says he's cool. I mean, there could be a lot of things that are going on. I mean, Bakhtiari is not the player that he was. I don't think he's ever been great, but he's had a knee injury, or he can't remember if he had surgery or not. So I mean, there's a number of things that could be a part of the reason the offense doesn't look quite right. But you have, at least for me, you have to come back to the way they've kind of changed things around. Edgar Bennett's got a role in this now. You have Tom Clemens calling the plays. Rodgers has a lot more say. Rodgers likes to go downfield. Rodgers, doesn't like to check down. So they're doing the things that he likes to do. Maybe they need to do the things that they think is better for the team and not necessarily what the quarterback likes.
Yeah. Well, they've shown the ability to make the tough call there too with Favre, and telling him he needs to retire. But Rodgers is their guy. He's in his prime. Do they have the wherewithal to tell him, you got to play with the game plan that we think is going to work, and I know you want to go downfield, but we're going to do short passes. You're going to get rid of the ball. I don't know. I think this coaching staff has shown that before too. I just don't know if he's willing, given how big his head must be before this game at least, how his willingness to adapt to a situation he doesn't want to adapt to. Do you see before half when they didn't call that timeout?
Yeah.
I was, when it was 3rd and 30 and the time was running down, and they didn't call a timeout. I certainly didn't understand that, but you could tell Rodgers looked really frustrated with that too. So you wonder when they go in the locker room if how much confidence he has in his coaches, or is that, seems like the relationship is just fine.
Well,
or is it just one of those things in the middle of the game you just get heated up and?
Well, Dave, we've talked about this from time to time in the past, and for a long time, Aaron Rodgers is the anti-Brett Favre, right? But the longer Rodgers played, and even earlier in this podcast, lots of ways he's kind of becoming Brett Favre. He's a 2-time MVP now. He's won a Super Bowl. He's probably on track to go to the Hall of Fame unless he winds up, God forbid, he gets hurt and can't finish out his career. But as all that comes together for you, and Favre had his own locker room, but Aaron seems like he gets to kind of run the plays that he wants to. And in some ways he is the Packers, and in some ways maybe he's a little bigger than the Packers. Maybe that's just the natural progression. I mean, some people, and I was among them, to be honest, kind of got down on Brett toward the end of his run with the Packers because it seemed to be more about him and what he liked and the way he wanted things to be, rather than what was going to be good for the team. And maybe that's what happens when you get your ticket punched and you're a great player and you're a Hall of Fame player and the team needs you and requires you to be a certain way. Maybe that's just the natural progression of how things go. And we're kind of seeing the same aging process, the same nervousness in the pocket. And are you as hungry at when you've won 2 MVPs in a Super Bowl, and I don't know. Maybe this is crazy, or maybe it's just how things go when players progress, play a long time, and become superstars.
I wish I knew. I wish I had that same experience and be that good and that famous and that catered to see if I could rise to the challenge and stay hungry. Why weren't we given that opportunity, Chris? I think we could have stayed hungry.
Well, you have. I
mean,
mean, you've risen to the top of your profession, but still, you're still in the office every day at 5:00 in the morning. You're still there. In fact, I think you're calling from the office right now. I mean, you haven't lost your drive and desire.
That's true. I take that all back. I know exactly what he's thinking. And you do. You get a sense of entitlement, and you don't want anyone to tell you what to do otherwise. I totally get it. Rogers is right.
Hey, let's get to the betting lines. And I've also got a couple of emails that I think might be worth mentioning. In fact, let's save the email. Let's go to the betting lines. Let's clean up from last time and look ahead to the Carolina game.
Okay. We had so the first one we had is how many sacks on Peyton Manning would there be? How many sacks by the Green Bay defense?
Zip.
You took 3.5,
God.
And the answer was
in
0.
my defense.
So.
Okay.
Well, I said the over.
2 weeks ago, you took the over? All right, good. Well, then in our defense, I mean, really, everything that we had seen to that point suggested that this was a guy who's rapidly declining, statuesque, wasn't on the same page with his coach. Isn't it funny how quickly things can change in the perceptions, and now we're talking about Aaron Rodgers maybe not, being on the same page with his coaches. Yeah, so anyway, the answer should have been 4, but it was 0. Did anybody get that?
There were out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that played, 4 took the over, like me. So most were smart enough to take the under.
And the players were Mike Miller, who comprises these stats for us every week. We thank you for that, Mike. But you played, Mike played, Greg Carson, Jeff Tum, Jared Stevenson, Tom Freeman, retired lawyer from California. Rich Holm, good to see Rich playing. Ed from Ireland, good. Tom Elmer, I believe he would be our Solicitor General. That was good. So those were the 9 players, and you said 4 of them?
4 had the over. So, as far as lines are going, you almost got it down 50-50, which is how I think you want to set the line.
Yeah.
The second one was, I said, how many Stark running yards minus the Lacey running yards? And you said minus 20. That actually weren't that bad, meaning Lacey would outrun Starks by 20 yards.
And I think it was how many yards did he have? 9 yards? What was the running for?
Lacey ran for 38, and Starks ran for 9.
So that actually wasn't that bad then. It was 29, right? Is the difference?
It was 20. It was 29. That's correct. So the right was the under. I took the under on that. Now, the math is way too difficult for me, but I'm just going to go with Mike and say the under was the correct one. Number 3 is how many sacks on Aaron Rodgers? You said 2.5. I took the over, and that was correct. He was sacked. How many times was
3, right?
He was sacked 3 times. So
but he was hit a lot more, and I think he was actually hurt out there, too.
Yeah.
And part of that dazed look, he may have been concussed. My son was watching the game and thinks that Rodgers may have been covering up a concussion.
Yeah, that's possible with the glassy-eyed look in his eye, and if that's true, that explains a lot of the offense, and then also explains a little bit of the defense, knowing he's not the same, so you're not giving your all on defense. That could explain quite a bit too, because that one hit he took was pretty vicious. Number 4, Aaron Rodgers' quarterback rating. You said 94. It was 69.7.
Ooh.
I took the over, as did most people, and it was the under. In fact, my fantasy football team, I must have had like 2 or 3 or 4 Packers playing, and I ended up losing a very winnable game because all my
You didn't take Drew Brees? What's your problem?
I could have taken Joe Flacco and one going away, but I did not.
What was he 40 of 50 for 511 yards and like 7 touchdowns?
7 touchdowns,
I mean,
yeah.
Just when you think Drew Brees is dead, you know, he comes back.
He comes back, yeah. Like the Phoenix he is. Number 5 is catches by Jeff Janis.
Oh, God.
You said 1.5, and I think
he
under.
only played 2 plays in the game.
Yeah, to the very end, maybe. So everyone basically took the under on that one. Number 6, when would they show highlights of the Super Bowl? And they did, but they did it in the pregame. I saw the stupid Elway spin.
Yeah, well, had I known that they were going to bring back the Super Bowl 32 team, I may have changed my view on that, but I didn't realize this was going to be a big deal for them. But it makes sense. It was a smart play on their part.
What was funny is 18 years ago, I watched that Super Bowl with my daughter who had just been born. And the sad thing is by losing that game, I had to pass my newborn daughter off to my wife for fear I would throw her across the room. Well, this game started, and she, of all the games of the year, she sat down and started to watch with me. And I said, hey, you know, this is that team that beat us in the Super Bowl when you were just born. And I told her that I thought she had to leave. And she
because
didn't
you're
leave
going to throw her across the room? Is that
yeah, she'll be a little bit harder. She's
she's 18 years old, yeah.
18 years old now. So a little bit harder, but she. So that could be another reason that it's my daughter Jinx, the Denver daughter Jinx might have had something to do with the game.
Well, you know, I watched the game as I did 18 years ago with my son, who was then 10 years old, and it was one of those great. I mean, it's the perfect age, right? 10 years old, and they lost, and they had won the year before, and I mean, I will never forget, you know, tucking him in that night, and you know. All the tears, and he said, "Dad."
Wait, whose tears?
He said, "Dad, don't worry. Let me finish the damn joke, okay?" And he said, "Dad, don't worry. It's going to be okay." You know? So that was how it was last night. But thanks for ruining it, Dave.
I did.
I was so damn close to finishing that off. Okay, well, just go on. All right.
All right. Well, it's all about timing. Sorry. Well,
it's all about timing, and you suck. Okay.
And I didn't know we were doing a routine.
You've been doing a routine for almost 11 years, Dave. So.
And our timing still sucks.
It's still, yeah. You think eventually we'd have this worked out.
Yeah. I think according to Mike, and I think it's true, I don't think they ever showed the Elway spin ever during the game. No. So if you said
but
none,
you
got
knew
that
they were
correct.
going to show that. Just, yeah.
It's in the pre-game. And then trick play. You said they would finally pull something out, and I said no, and well, I didn't see any trick play.
Well, there was the kind of the end around the cop, and I guess you're not counting that.
I'm not counting, and neither did Mike.
Right,
so, with the correct number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Jared Stevenson got all 7 correct.
Now, that means he gets to keep his room at the fabulous luxury presidential honeymoon suite at the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino right on the Strip in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Jared, move in, make yourself comfortable. This is your second week. Congratulations, my man.
Yeah, that's very good. Are you ready to do this week?
I am always ready, Dave.
All right, Mike, I hope you're on standby. For Carolina, the first one is how many rushing yards will Cam Newton get?
Been watching Cam Newton. In fact, they've had some designed runs for him tonight, and he looks damn good doing it. I'm going to put Cam Newton at. I'm going to put him at 55 yards.
All right. I'm going to. I think Clayton Matthews is going to shadow him. I think he's going to have a more difficult time, but I think he's going to break one for like 30 plus.
Yeah, that's all it takes to goof it up is one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the over on that. How many interceptions do you think Green Bay will get? I got a feeling that they're due for some, but Sam Shields could be hurt. I'll be interested to see what you're going to set the line for how many interceptions we have.
Yeah, watching this game instead of listening to you, I've been watching this game, and Cam Newton's not a bad quarterback. I mean, he's big, he can certainly run, but he unlike a lot of running quarterbacks, he can throw the thing. He can play from the pocket. I know they won't be without Shields, but they have some guys in Randall great ball skills. I don't know if Rollins is going to play or not. He was hurt, but he's got good ball skills. They might have to put Gunther in the game, another guy with good ball skills. Casey Hayward has got his minuses, but he also has good ball skills. So I'm going to set the line for interceptions. I think they're going to get. I think they're going to get one. So I'm going to put it at 1/2.
1/2. All right. I'm going to take the over. I think in every game there's going to be at least a chance to get one interception. Number 3, how many tackles do you think Julius Peppers will receive? And I apologize if I'm repeating myself from the short weeks. I just call them as I see them. Peppers had 1 last week. How many do you think he gets this week?
Well, you're going to get blasted again here. People just don't like it when you're,
I know they're
hard on their guy
fans.
here.
But he's going back to Carolina.
He's going back to Carolina.
And he's going to probably get a lot of grief this week because I think it's fair. They talked about it in the pregame show right away. They talk about Julius Peppers is invisible. So if someone were to tap on the shoulder and tell him, maybe he'll show up this week.
Do you know what a great superhero trait being invisible is? That's how good this guy is. Okay.
He is. He should be robbing banks.
Yeah. Hey.
Well,
when you're making that much money, you don't need to rob banks.
Well, I was going to say he's robbing the Packers blind with that plan.
Come on, be nice. This is an old man out there playing a young man's game. I'm going to put, as you said, sacks or tackles.
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 Sacks
I'm gonna put it at 3.5.
3.5. I'm taking the under.
Okay.
Now, Mike, that includes sacks. So
right.
any taking down an opponent.
Yeah.
Give me a quarterback rating for Aaron Rodgers this week.
Again, they're playing against a pretty good defense that just picked off Andy Luck. I am going to, and Rodgers might be a little more aggressive. I'm actually going to put that at 1.5.
His quarterback rating is going to be 1.5?
I thought you said interceptions.
I'm going to take the over.
I thought you said interceptions. I'm sorry. Okay. Quarterback
QB
rating. Let's put his quarterback rating at 87.
Oh, man. I'm going to take the over. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I do think he's going to be picked off at least once, maybe twice, and that's going to keep the rating down. In fact, Peyton Manning, as good as he was, his quarterback rating was under 100 because of the pick that he threw. So, it just takes 1 or 2 INTs. I don't want to influence you here, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'm taking over.
A little more aggressive Aaron Rodgers, may mean that he could throw a second interception or something. I'm just saying.
All right.
I'm just saying.
All right, the number 5. I'm going to go with the team approach here. How many rushing yards will Green Bay receive? So now, I don't care. I'm talking Rodgers.
Everybody. They had 90 this week. Rodgers had 31 of those. I'm going to put that number at 114.
All right, I'm going to take the over on that. I'm going to take the over. I don't feel real good about that, but I'm going to take the over. Number 6. Given that I think teams are trying to take him away, how many catches do you think Randall Cobb will?
Teams are really, I think, taking him away. He had 6 catches, a very quiet 6 catches, because they were trying to do that stuff out of the backfield. He only averaged 4.5 yards a catch this past week, and they targeted him 9 times. So I think he's going to get his catches. But let's set that number at. Set it at 5.5.
Ooh, if he said 6.5, I was going to take the under, but I'm going to take the over now. I think he gets at least 6. Right. So 5.5. And last one, will they run a trick play this week, Chris?
I'm going to say yes again. I'm going to go yes. And Carolina just won, by the way, to go 7-0. So,
well, I'm actually glad. I want them riding high, and I don't think they're going to overlook the Packers because I think Packers have had their number and Cam Newton's number for a while. But another chip on their shoulder, right? Just losing an overtime game, I think is not a plus for the Packers. Although I suppose for playoff seeding it would be better if they lost. But all right, here we go. Here's a chance to take an undefeated team and take them down and win respectability. I'm going to say no trick play.
Okay.
By the way, I don't think it's in the DNA for McCarthy to do it anymore. especially when the season is a little bit shaky. I don't think he's in a place that he can take chances.
All right then. So let's take. We have to give the email address. Do you have that handy for our man Mike, who does all the tabulations on this for us? Do you have that, or do we got to look up?
Well, I sent that to him. What's our normal Packers Therapy at packerstalk.com? Is that the? That's not what Mike should use. I sent him an email.
Okay, so let's have people who are playing, the players. We had 9 this time. You send it to our guy Mike Miller, and you can reach him at mitnomiller@gmail.com.
Oh, that's
all
right.
Yep. So you want to send it to it's mitnomiller, I guess is what it would be, mitnomiller@gmail.com. If you want to play for a chance to throw Jared out into the street with all of his hookers and blow that he probably has in the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino, please go ahead and do that. Jared, though, have we had a 3-time winner? A guy?
I don't think so. This could be a first.
All right, Jared.
I think there's in the contract, if you win 3 times in a row, they get an all-expense paid vacation to Stevens Point, staying at your house.
Oh well, actually they get a trip to Wisconsin to stay at the house of Susie Favor, who's got a lot of experience in Las Vegas. So,
all right. Well, what Susie Favor?
You weren't following that story? She's written a book about it. Yeah, she was she needed excitement in her life, and she was worked for an escort agency.
Interesting.
Yeah, you look it up. She's written a book about it. And she, of course, is from Stevens Point. She's a Stevens Point, Wisconsin native. And
is that true, too?
Yes. Well, you didn't know she was a native of Stevens Point.
I did not. Susie?
Yeah, the Olympian.
Was she escort in Stevens Point?
No, in Las Vegas. She had a situation worked out. She was getting $600 an hour, so she was apparently good at her job. She was a good middle distance runner, too. So we want to,
All right. Well,
look it up.
Way too
look
much
it up on the
information all
Google.
at once.
Check it out
all
on the Google. Yeah, but I don't think we haven't employed her at the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino. Although as a fellow Stevens Pointer, a former runner at Spash High School here, maybe we could get her to do a personal appearance and a book signing, perhaps.
Jared, this is your incentive to win 3 times in a row.
Now we've got some email that I want to cover here, and. One of them from Edward Rise Thomas. Now, this is our guy, I believe, who's been traveling around the country. Ed is from Ireland, and with a name like Edward Rise Thomas, I mean, this just says aristocracy. It's like Evan Dietrich Smith, the 5th Earl of Chichester. I'm not sure if Edward Rise Thomas, or Ed from Ireland, is in fact a member of the Irish nobility or not. But he does say that he listens to Around the NFL podcast. I don't know why you waste your time on that, Ed. And they frequently mention how many countries they have been downloaded in. Do you ever do the same thing for Packers Therapy? And that's Ed from Ireland, listening from Japan on an around-the-world trip. The next stop is Korea, listening through Beyond Pod app on Android on the Packers Talk Radio Network. Nicely done, Ed. So he's listening to us, probably from Korea this week. He was in Japan before, but he's an Irish guy. What I'd like to have happen is for people to write to us, either on our email account, which is packerstherapy@packerstalk.com, or on Twitter @packerstherapy, and tell us where you listen to us from. I mean, I know Pastor Kevin's listening down in North Carolina. I know where a lot of our guys are. Of course, Stephen and Guy in London. And I know we have Dr. Klaus traveling the world, but oftentimes, most of the time, listening to us in Norway. So I'd be curious to know, where do you listen to Packers Therapy? And don't say your bathroom or something like that. We're looking for a country or a city, state, or perhaps a city-state like, say, Athens or Rome, something like that. So let us know. We would very much like to hear from you on that. And thank you for the idea, Ed from Ireland, who is in Japan on his way to Korea. And also, we got a tweet this week from Jason. Jason Deesh, I believe that would be pronounced. And he mentioned it was a great podcast last week before the bye. Your description of why we watch sports was dead on. Made me proud to be a fan. Now, we kind of repeated a lot of the things that we had talked about after the last podcast of last year, after the Seattle game. We spent a long time kind of crying in our beer and talking about the difference that sports makes in our lives, why we're fans, why we do it, and we kind of reprise some of that stuff. And thank you for that, Jason. We got a lot of really nice feedback when we've talked about this in the past. And it really is the reason that 11:30 at night on a Monday night, Dave and I are babbling on about the Packers, because it is such a great respite from the responsibilities and obligations that all of us face. Yeah, we want our teams to win, but it's such a good salve to put on the open gaping wound that is life.
Of life.
that it's a lot of fun to do it, and we're really glad we have such a great community of downloaders. About the way it looks, around 3,000 a week or so that download this podcast, and probably about 30 of those people actually listen to it. But we're glad for those 30 people, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, that you enjoy what we do, and that it's something that gives your life a little meaning and maybe makes the stresses and challenges you face a little easier to bear. And if that's the case, we're happy to do it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Our podcast gives your life, not our listeners' lives, meaning.
Exactly.
Is really what it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Although I do have to argue, this game did not put a salve on the open, gaping wound of life for me. I felt like what it did is it reached inside and dropped a bag of salt in there. That's what it felt like.
Not for me, and I'll tell you why not for me. Because it's the seventh freaking game of the regular season. They're 6-1. That Seattle game last year, the last game of the year, that one wasn't like getting jolted in the package. It was like getting jolted in the package, having your testicles ripped out and stomped on, and then jammed back in your groin. That's what that was like.
Wow. Yeah. That's what sports does to you. Yep. It's the salve, sometimes the scrotum ripping experience of that puts meaning in your life.
Exactly. Well, hey, and also thanks to some of the other people that got us on Twitter at Packers Therapy this week, including our guy Nick. You remember Nick from?
I do. Yeah. Bookie Channel, right?
We had a lot of fun with that young man when he was doing some blog writing, and he was one of the people that really popularized the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino and the betting lines. Really great to hear from Nick Cavett. Of course, Pastor Kevin in touch with us right after the game. Pastor Kevin's a guy that really feels it, and I've known him on the internet for a long time, in touch with us several times via Twitter this week. We mentioned Ed from Ireland. We also had a woman in touch with us, Vicki Miller. I don't know any relation to our guy Mike Miller, who does the tabulations on the betting lines, but glad to hear from you, Vicki, this week as well. Thank you to everybody who is in touch with us. A lot of good humor, a lot of good friends that like what we do and are very kind, and maybe even one day somebody will actually even sponsor this podcast, which, by the way, Dave, it's available for sponsorship, in case you didn't know that.
The tough thing for Vicki is she doesn't understand the metaphors you use when you say scrotum ripping experience. I think that's maybe one of the reasons we have fewer female listeners.
I thought it was because of our misogynistic characteristics. I thought it was probably a big reason why.
Yeah. We're going to have to be more generic in our metaphors and descriptions. So we'll work on that.
What do you work at a university and all the sensitivity and microaggression and all that sort of stuff?
Well, it's just
you've gone
now that I know that women are listening,
flaccid.
It's going to change. Yeah. The flaccid, yes. Well, she may be well aware of what that means. I don't know. That's a different story. But anyway, where were we?
Yeah. Well, we're just wrapping up. Packers 6-1. Now that's not bad. And if you had told me after 7 games they'd be 6-1, I'd say cool.
Yeah, I would too.
That's what my new skill is going to say. The one that you're buying me for Christmas. It's going to say he's cool.
It'll say you're 6'1", and that's cool.
Yeah, I'd still be shorter than you.
Imagine if we could go the next 7 games 6-1, but the last game, who are playing, we're going to get beat horribly. Would you take it? You would, right? You would take another 6-1 over the next 7 games, right?
Damn right. Because I'm 12-2 after 14 games. Yeah, I'd be good with that.
Think of it that way. Now there's your salve on your gaping wound of life there. That's the therapy that we promise each and every week.
And we've done it now for 260 some episodes. So
that's right.
All right, we are done babbling. I think we probably talked it out as much as we can. The fact of the matter, there are no real answers here. Why does a team 6-0 after a bye week come out and just not have it together? It's a lot of small things. Who knows?
Because life is cruel.
But yeah, because life is, and you know what? It's not only cruel, Dave, it's short. Yeah.
That's the great combination.
That's right. It's both cruel and short. So get with it, Packers fans. That's the reality that you're looking at this week. We'll have to give him Pastor Kevin's information so he can do some counseling.
Yeah, and you're only 6 days away from another massive disappointment in Carolina.
That's right. Yeah, but you know what the great thing is? Even if they manage to win, there'll still be people that call the call-in shows and write to us who are disappointed about something that went on, even if they win.
Right.
So,
and no matter what, 6 days from now, you'll be 6 days closer to death. That's the other thing you can just focus on is that you're that much closer to the end.
In fact, you got 12 minutes at halftime. It's plenty of time to contemplate your mortality. And what I say is have another beer, have a bratwurst that's really fatty. Because that'll clog the arteries to the heart. It doesn't really matter. It does. It's cruel and it's short. Let's face it.
Yeah, I heard that there's a meteor that was close by that almost hit the planet. I mean, can you imagine? That's what's going to happen. Is we're going to be in the Super Bowl and it's going to be seconds ticking down the clock, and then some major disaster is going to happen and it's just going to take it all away from us.
You know what? I think that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to be this close to ecstasy, and it's going to be like life itself, a massive disappointment.
It will. Just can't see it through the end. That's right. I don't know where we are right now. This is a super long podcast. No one is going to be listening at this point.
Well, I stopped listening too, so we're going to wrap it up. I guess we'll probably come back and do it next week, I suppose, right?
I don't know. There's no guarantee.
We'll talk about if we're both still alive. We will come back and do another podcast. Packers lose the first game, their first game of the season, 6-1, a game ahead of the Vikings. They'll tee it up and play it again in Carolina against the undefeated Panthers. Next Sunday, we will be back either Monday morning or Tuesday morning. You can download us and we'll talk about it, and you'll get more of this BS again. But until that time, I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.
Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If a Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Eddie Lacy, Mike Daniels, Gilbert Brown, Don Barclay, Micah Hyde, your Green Bay Packers, yesterday's legends and today's superstars. From corporate or nonprofit events to private parties, add some spice, hire a Packers player from Mayfield Sports Marketing. For details, just go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances.